Good morning, good afternoon, depends on which part of the zone you are in. A good day, and I hope you all are staying safe. So, thanks for joining us. This is our first of the many podcasts that we are going to do. So, this is in alliance with CTO Academy. If you have been wondering about what next generation enterprises, let me give a small blurb about it. Many people have been asking me. So, as a kid, I've always been fascinated with Star Trek, and I love Star Trek. In fact, I just posted what Star Trek's next generation enterprise spaceship looks like. The world we live in, and of course, in alliance with CTO Academy, we are in a very different world. Fundamentally, technology has been disrupting everything. There'll be the blockchain, edge compute, IoT, cloud, quantum, what have you, and thanks to Elon Musk as well. So we live in a very different world where the traditional business models, which took days, weeks, and they could only raise millions, the business models today is like the Uber are handwritten in a paper, and then they've been able to make billions of dollars. And then for the very first time, we have a change of culture, a change of people, meaning from a Gen X to Gen Z. So, the models that were in no longer work, they're being disrupted. So we thought, why don't we think about how the future of an organization would be, how the future business models would be. So this is how our idea came. And so we started this podcast. What does it mean for the existing people to work with the new workforce? What does it mean to adapt our business models for the future work models, if not get disrupted? And finally, this is the first time, like I said, we have a huge diversity. So how do we make sure people have those empathetic skills? So we started this journey of this podcast, and thank you all for joining. So we will be going around the world interviewing people from each continent to understand the culture, the models, and what it means to all of us. So as a part of this podcast, the first thing is I've been very honored to call a good friend of mine, Shail, to participate and help us understand this. Shail has a multitude of roles, and actually I feel very envious of Shail. If you look at his profile, I would suggest all of you to do look at his profile. All the way from an IT to a CMO to a CXO and what have you not, Shail. So welcome, Shail, and thank you for accepting our invite. Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Ramesh. Congratulations to you and the CTO Academy for launching this series and shining the light on a very important topic.
Thanks, Shail. So Shail, obviously I know you, but for our audience sake, why don't you tell your journey, and help us enlighten a little bit more about yourself. And obviously we are not talking of automation, which you and I are very passionate, but we are talking more and more about transformation.
Well, my journey has been about transformation and adaptation. I started many years ago as a civil structural engineer. I used to design buildings and bridges. And lo and behold, now I do marketing for tech companies, and I have been in roles as a general manager, a CMO, and a chief customer officer for public and private companies. It's been an exciting journey of transformation. I am also a executive in residence at a venture firm in Palo Alto, California, and I run an independent customer group called Vocal, which stands for Voice of the Customer in the automation landscape. So that's been a very rewarding experience of years of relationships with customers and bringing them all together in this group called Vocal and hearing about their best practices, pain points, insights. And these are CIOs, CTOs, CXOs, and a mix of folks.
Very cool, Shail. I do like that. So if you do have to raise some funding for the audience, you better go to Shail. He can help us do the funding. And I like vocal being vocal. Yes, the voice of the customer, very good. So Shail, obviously we are from the CTO Academy. The world is no longer the same. How do you see, in your perspective, because you've been in the CMO and we are from the CTO Academy, is there a convergence or a divergence, or the roles are becoming very what the pristine roles are no longer what they used to be? Things have changed. How do you see a CMO taking on CTO? Where do you see the convergence or divergence?
I think before we go there, could we touch on the future of work, if you don't mind?
All by all means, Shail.
So I think this topic of future of work is fascinating to me, right? To me, the future of work is an anomaly. Look, between the time we started this webinar and by the time we finish this webinar, we will be in a future state. And I feel work is more fluid in nature, and perhaps this future of work is more about the fluid nature of work than it is an absolute. I think it changes the way we think about it. You know, if it's the future of work, we tend to project a future. We fit the technologies we know of today into a narrative of how they will help us in the future. If we think about work as being fluid, we learn iteratively and transformatively, and transform this work, realizing that change is a constant. So perhaps it's a nuance, but I don't see future as being an absolute. You know, as you can probably tell, you know, I'm not interested in this topic. I'm actually very passionate about this topic.
I can see it. I can feel it. It's like, so touching about the fluidity, you brought a great point. You know, like I said at the very beginning, I think this is the first time where we are seeing the baby boomers to the Gen Z being in this fluid situation. How do you see, you know, you've been a leader, you've been across this digital transformation. Fluidity brings two things. One is the ability to maneuver, but then fluidity also brings resistance. How do you see the future, or I would say slash fluidity of the workforce adapting to this new era?
Let me give you an example from a perspective of a CMO, right? So you look at it from the CMO role combining into Chief Customer Officer role and a CTO role. I sort of envision an ideal organization being a boundaryless organization. But I think, you know, if you look at the Chief Marketing Officer role, the footprint has clearly expanded over the last many, many years, right? Today, there are over 10 functions within marketing, you know, things like pricing and demand generation and sales development and data scientists and analysts, marketing ops, public relations, analyst relations, and keeps expanding. And each area is complex and fluid in nature, that they all have to be aligned and working together. And marketing's job is to bring vitamin R, you know, revenue into the organization. And it's no longer to complete a campaign that is launched and product hits the shelf and marketing's job is over. Marketing is responsible for the entire customer journey, from discovery of the customer to the maturity of the customer. And technology has actually enabled marketeers to know more regarding their target audience than they ever have before. Tech has completely transformed this fluidity as well. 5G, for example, you know, while it has been talked about for a while, research shows that it's 1,000 times faster than 4G. This means, you know, marketing teams can push rich, robust, premium content and trust that the users will actually see it versus clicking away even before it loads. For most CMOs, it opens a whole new world of advertising and customer experience. You know, take AI, for example, another example. Right? AI will lead to marketing renaissance in real-time marketing campaigns, deeper processing of data, deeper understanding of human behavior and emotions. You take augmented reality, which offers customers a new experience, new services, new skills, or just to have fun. You know, all of which really improves the customer experience. So the technology stack continues to grow, continues to be fluid. If you look at MarTech technologies, and I'm not joking, the 2020 MarTech landscape has 8,000 tools, believe it or not, Ramesh, 8,000 tools. And this is about a 14% increase from last year. It's about 1,500 new tools have been added. Data solutions is the biggest increase, over about 25%. One of the biggest increases. Conversational chat tools have gone up by 70%. In the marketing stack. And yet, if you ask marketing, you know, are all of these solutions a strategic enabler for you? Guess how many of them will agree? 24%. 24% agree that all these tools are a strategic enabler. And this is giving a rise to a end-to-end orchestration of solutions, which are nothing but a coordinated series of proactive, personalized interactions that have to occur. So this is a good example of the fluidity of work, showing the evolution of the MarTech stack over time and how technologies have transformed the CMO role, which is now starting to overlap with the CTO role as well.
You got a couple of interesting points, Shail. First of all, I hope my CTO friends don't get frightened that is CMO overlapping or superimposing on top of CTO. So a couple of interesting things you did bring, and actually I was talking to my son. He needs to learn 5G, AR, VR. The customer experience, what you nailed is pretty much apt for us. All the kids, all of the younger generations are playing Lego blocks. But when you talk of AR, VR, and 5G, your marketing ad could be very personalized to me. So I could build my own VR, build my campaign, test it out. And if I do like it, I push it back. It'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, I'd love to see how it shapes up. But what's actually interesting, by the way, the facts are phenomenal. I didn't know. I thought automation only was hot. MarTech seems to be really hot. So, I've been in the Oracle industry and I've seen Oracle's MarTech acquisitions going on. How successful have these MarTechs been? Because part of the problem, what we have seen is, again, is technology overtaking marketing or marketing taking technology, which I'm not clear if you could shed some light on it? Or is there a hype behind a reality, which I still don't get it?
I think in terms of technology overtaking marketing and marketing overtaking technology, I see it slightly differently. I see it more of a symbiotic relationship that has to occur between the marketing organization and the technology organization. There are some key synergies that do exist. I talked a little bit about the development of MarTech. Let me ask you, Ramesh, have you seen this movie called Dawn of Justice, Batman versus Superman?
Rings a bell, but probably not.
You should watch it. It's a movie where Batman and Superman begin as enemies, and eventually they join forces with Wonder Woman to fight the common enemy, Lex Luthor. And like a great CMO, Batman needs technologies to win his battles, right? And similar to a CTO, Superman has superpowers and augments the conventional tech to do things that Batman cannot do alone. And when the two reconcile, they kick some serious butt. CTO wants lower cost, higher security, greater efficiency. CMOs want to make sure that their marketing dollars are adequately, efficiently spent. They want to move fast. They want to achieve an ROI. And both can build a type of a collaborative relationship. Both must plan for how the technology will be implemented, how it will be used, how it will be maintained. When you look at the MarTech stack, the CMO may or may not have the talent to launch and run an enterprise marketplace, right? Yet the success of an online enterprise marketplace, as an example, often falls on marketing. CTO can find the developers who can do the best job, and hence the synergistic approach is absolutely necessary. Another point of collaboration is the product roadmap itself. CMOs can effectively bring the voice of customer that feeds into the CTO's roadmap. And a symbiotic relationship is absolutely critical. So it's less about, I feel, it's less about whether technology is overtaking marketing or vice versa. I would say, I advocate more for a boundaryless organization that can go a long way in helping these two roles evolve.
Interesting. Actually, one of the core concepts of Industry 4.0 is a boundaryless architecture. So it's pretty much similar to what you're saying. This is actually good. So I think for my fellow friends who are looking at becoming the future of tech leaders, I think understanding marketing actually helps. So this is actually great. So you have been at the forefront of this transformation. How did you explain this, the kind of, the convergence, or like I would take out the convergence, the symbiosis of a CMTO, that would be beneficial for the company, both for the management and both for the people inside. So many people, when you talk to them internally, what is this new symbiotic role? They don't get it. How do you echo the value of a symbiotic relation both to the top level and the mid management and the kind of the development teams?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think it all starts with a different mindset. The marketing as well as the technology landscape is very complicated these days, right? It's important for CMOs to educate themselves on technology, not just rely on the CTO. The same goes for the finance organization. The same goes for the customer success organization, who are actively involved in making technology decisions. From a CMO, CTO, CMTO perspective, it's not just about marketing technology, but the customer technology is extremely critical. Marketing's choice of software, how do you configure it? How do you operate it? How do you creatively apply it? It materially affects how a firm perceives and influences its audience. All right, in terms of shaping that customer experience. And how does the customer actually see the firm? So it cannot be a disjointed effort of a marketing effort and a technology effort that's not in a symbiotic fashion. And I think we can no longer afford silos between users of technology and providers of technology. There's a rapid collapse of these silos means that one person must be able to converse seamlessly between both groups, and hence there is a rise in this role of the CMTO, Chief Marketing Technology Officer as well. Without technology, marketing is quickly being left behind. Conversely, an IT organization that is not connected to the marketing functions is essentially blind to a large majority of the information assets that are being created and managed by marketing information systems. So there's no better way than to have a symbiotic relationship, putting the customer in the center of the organization. I would say that the best way to explain it, you asked me, how do you explain that synergy, the boundaryless example? It all starts with the customer itself. And if you're serving the customer, if you care about customer experience, if you care about a seamless customer experience across the board, then you would collapse the silos and bring these organizations together.
Very good. Actually, very interesting. Yeah. So I'll take it a little bit. So mature companies have these roles. So sometimes they have this friction of partnering with the CMO with CTO. In a startup, you are jack of all. So you are a finance person, you're a marketing guy, you're a technology. So when you talk to a startup guy, they don't have so much time. Like again, I gave the very big at the very beginning the example of Uber, where they made a business model on a paper napkin and they made billions. From a startup perspective, there are two things. They are very much resource constrained, but then they do on the role of all the way every role. Mm-hmm. How do you see the youngsters embracing the role of a CMO, CMTO, not just from a title perspective, more from an empathy perspective? How do you see these youngsters embracing that? This is one thing, again, we talk of design thinking and all, but all the youngsters who are becoming these new gen CMTOs or CTOs, how do you see them embracing the empathy, the gender inequality we have, and the concept of inclusivity, or the principle of equality? How do you see for the youngsters adopting these kind of principles?
I think it's a journey. I think great technology leaders are often pioneers in their field. They have excellent analytical reasoning, deductive skills. They have an excellent ability to grasp complex thoughts and often hold multiple complex thoughts in their mind at the same time while having a conversation. I think the softer skills are critically important as well. Empathy, emotional intelligence, collaboration. Technical prowess, I feel, makes technical leaders stand out, right? The combination of the softer skills I mentioned makes them indispensable. So I think authentic leadership is absolutely, absolutely essential. Tech leaders and any leaders for that matter should recognize that the longest journey that they will ever take is the 18 inches from the head to the heart, right? And
That's a good one.
that's where the softer skills come into play, particularly in a startup, because in a startup there are two roles and only two roles: you're building product and you're selling product. That's pretty much it. And the combination of those two roles requires the technical prowess as well as the softer skill combination.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. I've met many of my friends who've been very product savvy, but basically one of the things they've said is they've had no time to focus on the soft skills, or we don't know where to go, because you find institutes or leaders talking about CTO, CIO, but from an empathy perspective, it's all over. It's not very clear. In order to become a leader, you have all this, but the soft skills is something that needs mentoring.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I would say that it requires mentoring, but it also requires a deeper understanding of one critical element that's important in authentic leadership besides the soft skills, which is the customer itself. Really understanding the customer journeys, living in the mindset of your customer. I think when you do that, the criticism that you get from customers about your product, the insights that you get about what is working well, go a long way in helping drive success or failure for any organization.
So I should probably change my title as Next Generation to the Fluid Enterprise. I like it, by the way. So, this is all great topics. One thing that we haven't touched is COVID-19. First of all, I hope everybody's safe. How has COVID-19, or how do you see the fluid enterprise? So COVID-19 actually has given us three lessons. Again, I'm not going to repeat what Satya Nadella and the automation team talks of the digital transformation, but has COVID-19 impacted the fluidity of an enterprise, and how does it shape the future? Because I'm so tired of hearing the word new normal, guys. This is the way we will live in. So, how do you see this from a future of an enterprise and from a workforce?
Well, I think COVID has really shined the light on the fluidity of work, even the fluidity of schooling, as an
Yes.
example, right? How we educate ourselves, or how we have these conversations. Doing a lot of web-based interfaces. Uh, I think it has also shined the light on the need for the softer skills when you are, in fact, working in an environment that is remote and may not have the constant interface that you may have around a water cooler, as an example. So the need for empathy, the need for softer skills is even more than it was there before. I would say that it has also shined the light on the fact that work will continue to evolve. If you ask many people, do they want to return back to the traditional work environment? I think you'll find many that don't, and enjoy the fluidity, the flexibility that they have in the current work scenarios that we find ourselves in. So COVID has really created an impact, I believe, on the fluid nature of work. I believe that impact is going to live with us for a long time.
Very interesting. So, what's your uptake or intake on Tesla or Elon Musk Neuralink? Is that making us even more fluid? Will we become celestial now?
That's an interesting question. I was trying to explain that to my 13-year-old daughter about what Neuralink actually does, and her response was, "That's creepy." Was the response I got. And it does sound creepy, but I think I envision a different sort of future, if I may. I envision the future fluid nature of work to evolve. I look for a time when work will be a conversation. Why should you have a meeting and then go back after the meeting and summarize the meeting and delegate the actions, take those actions, email things to someone, call them up with updates, right? Work today is being done outside of the conversation. I envision a time where there are bots that are listening to cues, that are picking up on actions and performing those actions while you're conversing. I envision that in the future, work is the conversation, and I think it'll give us that nature of work will give us a gift and a choice. And the gift will be that of time. Time will be freed up from the work of the way that work is done today. And the choice is, what do we do with that time?
Yeah, maybe we could. Yeah, sure. And then so this is actually good. So CTO Academy obviously focuses on training leaders, and one of the things, like you kind of said, is leadership is taking it or dripping down that 18 inches of the deep thought into your heart. This is something many leaders, in fact, you would have seen. In your experience, how do you train or select people as high performing leaders? These guys are really top notch, but they are developers. And how do you see them grooming, becoming a high performing leader? Or in a sense, how do you qualify or quantify somebody who has some great leadership skills? Just because I got a promotion doesn't mean I'm a leader. I'm a manager. So, you have seen the industry, you have seen the experience. By looking at the people and talking to them, was there any way, and what do you call a sixth sense or intuitiveness of classifying people as high performance leaders?
I think, character really shows itself in times of adversity. So it's really good to understand how leaders function in adverse scenarios. Take the current climate that we have, the current political climate in the country as an example, right? It's shining a light on, how do you handle character, how do you handle responses in a situation that is not very pleasant. I think understanding that aspect of leadership history is critically important. I think equally so, besides the skills that you're hiring for, whether it's a demand generation skill, whether it's a senior architect as an example, you also want to look for, does the candidate actually have innovative capabilities? Can they innovate beyond the role that they're in? Do they have a instigator capability? In other words, that means, can they shake up the organization? Can they bring new insights into the organization? Can they work beyond the challenges that might be posed to them? You also want to look for people that can provide a culture add to your organization. There's so much talk, Ramesh, about culture fit. And when you hire for culture fit, which is important, no doubt about it, you get the same people in the organization. You get, blue, red, green, pink, yellow, whatever culture fit your organization is. I think you want to hire for culture add in addition to culture fit. Can this person come in and actually add to the culture of my organization?
Interesting. Actually, you covered my next question, is what kind of qualities you need, but you kind of covered two questions. One is, how do you identify leaders? I love the word characteristics or character that defines, and being innovative. I think, the future or aspiring leaders, whoever is listening and whoever wants to get into this, I think two things, if I were to say, is characterization and innovation. Be a leader in tough times. Right, that's it. So we are at the top of the hour. Shail, anything you want to say? By the way, I just loved it. It's phenomenal. Always here, always wonderful to hear your insights.
I don't have any concluding comments other than I feel that the nature of work going forward, I hope it becomes the conversation itself, because that brings us back to a human-to-human interaction, which is what work really is in many ways, right? It's how do we get back to that conversation as opposed to work being done after the conversation occurs.
So do you miss the human to human? Because now we live in a virtual world.
Do I miss the human to human interaction? I have, I miss the face-to-face interactions. I would say my human to human interactions have not reduced at all. In fact, they've gone up. because of the ability to get on a quick video call with anyone, anywhere around the world.
Cool. Yeah, I see questions popping in. Andrew, go ahead to share.
Hi, Shail. It's Andrew here from CTO Academy. I've decided that I'm going to also register CMTO Academy because that's clearly where we're all heading. But actually, on a serious note, you explained so much and eloquently explained so much about how the roles might be merging more in the future and already are merging. But you've told us in a fairly positive light. And from my experience, from the CTO's perspective, there is and there are. There's a fight for power and resources going on in a lot of organizations. I'm told anecdotally that some CMOs now have a larger tech budget than the CTO in their organization. They speak very different languages. There is clearly a culture clash, however positively we want to think about the future. So from a CTO's perspective, or someone who is feeling challenged by that, or perhaps their team are feeling challenged, from your experience, how can that gap be bridged?
I think you're right. There are certain gaps for sure. I think the gaps are bridged primarily from the perspective of looking at what are the objectives. As long as you have aligned objectives for what you're going after, and this goes back beyond, by the way, the CTO and the CMO itself. It goes back to the leadership of the organization, including the C-suite at the CEO and the board level. Are we are we assigning objectives that align organizations together, or are pulling organizations in different directions? If the CTO's objectives are only based on security and risk tolerance and mitigation of risk, and the CMO's objectives are only based on get the net new leads and drive revenue, there could be a misalignment of objectives. I think when you get the objectives aligned, whether they are around the customer itself, as one example, a lot of the friction that you notice in the organization tends to go away. There is some of it, and you have to have the softer skills to navigate through it, but it starts with the objective alignment.
Thanks, Shail. Great. I've enjoyed it very much.
Andrew, I would suggest we should do OKRs. Basically, OKRs actually align both.
I'm not sure a big fan of OKRs these days. I noticed
that. Yes. Yeah, we can probably bring that discussion later. But yeah, Shail, I think we are at the top of that. I simply loved it. Every time I talk to you, it's always been an eye-opener, and I look forward. Yeah, Andrew, so I think, basically, characterization and innovation is all the future leaders need, and please do include gender diversity and equality. With that, I think we can wrap it up, but it's great, Shail and the team supporting us. So we will be meeting next month at the same time. We will be meeting Lissi Radam. He's the Chief Digital Officer at Baker Tilly. So we started in US, we'll be going to Europe, and then we'll go to India and Australia and come back to US. So we want to have different cultures, different experiences, shaping up future leaders, future cultures, and ultimately being successful in our journey. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Ramesh.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you both. Have a good evening.
Bye.